This summer and fall, I've been on the road teaching a lot to practitioners. And the biggest takeaway for 2022 is all this, whether it's TV advertisements, phone calls, boosts, etc. It's like, and I'll quote one that just kind of keeps ringing out. In 8 minutes, I can qualify for $26,000 per employee. Here's the number to contact. When I hear that, it's like I'm in the business of doing an ERC. But this video is not about how to do the ERC. This is really watch and don't take the bait, because, and I'll just give you a real quick experience of what happened to me. And then I want to go through what the rules are. So I was teaching at a location, and I'm watching MeTV and watching a show. And during 1 hour, I had 3 different advertisements about this 8 minutes get $26,000 per employee. So I took the bait. And what I did is I got on my phone, wherever it's laying here, got on my phone, and I go in, hit the website, and they have these questions for me to fill out. I filled out the questions. 3 out of the first 4 answers, it appeared to me I qualified. So how come I didn't know about this? As a taxpayer, how come my tax preparer didn't know about this? Is because, see, I teach ERC. These questions are paraphrased out of the actual law, and I was taught growing up, don't paraphrase, you gotta look at the whole verse. So what I did is I took these phrases and I went to irs.gov, I went back and looked at the phrases. The little short snippets, you can say that, but what they were not doing is making the whole statement. And I just want to take the one that seems to be the big one that most of them are focused on, and that is the supply chain disruption. But before I dive into that, and because that's what they were qualifying me for, remember the rules. There's 2 ways to qualify for the ERC, and keeping it simple, not get down in the weeds. 1 is because of a gross receipts test, and 2 is because of a government shutdown by a government order. Well, in these advertisements, because when I got back here to the office, I started doing more research. And in doing it, I did ones that were advertising me in email. I did them on TV. You know, every single time my company qualified on filling out their questionnaire. Every time. But the truth is, because I know the law, every time I did not qualify. And remember, wait a minute, we're talking about taxes. I'm a taxpayer. You're a taxpayer. When we sign that dotted line, we are liable. If we got these people advertising that's charging 20, 25, 30% fee, there's a reason. And so what happens, and even the IRS has put out some notices to beware, but even those notices don't tell me why. What I want to do, and don't want to get off in the weeds, but there's 2 ways. Receipts, gross receipts, but they don't advertise that because you as a taxpayer or your tax professional can do a little calculation and know whether or not you qualify based on that test. But what they do is they hit the government order. So on the government order is that I want to read it is that a partial or full shutdown of operations due to the direct impact of COVID-19 orders, I want to say orders, limiting commerce, travel, group meetings, and more than nominal portion of trade or business, the government order test. So this is this debate, this 8 minutes and 26,000, and TIGTA, GAO's all over it. There's all this fraud, but I'm going to help you not get caught up and help you either not take the bait, or if you have taken the bait, raise the question to make sure you qualify. So in doing this, they're saying the supply chain disruption. Well, if I look at the supply chain disruption, and I'm looking specifically at Notice 2020-21, for an employer to claim a full or partial suspension due to a government order that impacts its suppliers, it must consider all the relevant facts and circumstances. So I'm not qualifying under the gross receipts test. I don't have a government shutdown where let's say it's a plant is at, but I can't get my supplies. So that's a supply chain disruption. That's not the question. Is it a supply chain disruption because of a government order? And that's what they kept leaving out on these advertisements. What does that mean? Here's the test. The supplier's ability to make deliveries of critical goods due to a government order. So if I'm running that plant and I need supply, I need some raw material, and I call the supplier and the supplier goes, you know what, Larry, I can't get you the raw material. I can't get employees to show up to work. Did you hear me say government order? I can't get your supplies because I can only run one shift. I didn't hear government order. See, that's where I got this experience in these questions. I was answering those questions in 8 minutes, truthfully, but they were not asking me the complete question. So here's what they should have asked me. Again, the first one I just read it. The supplier's ability to make deliveries of critical goods, not just goods, critical goods due to a government order. So in a minute, I'm going to tell you what you need to document for that government order. Secondly, the employer's ability to purchase critical goods from an alternative supplier. So you're going to have to document, did I check other suppliers? Did I check for product that's similar that I could replace the product I'm using? I'm a restaurant and I need cups and I need towels. Can I get those from another supplier? If you didn't check that out, but first is the person you get it from is shut down because remember one government order? So they're shut down. Then next, did we look whether we could purchase those critical goods from another supplier that may not be in the part of the country where there's a government order that's partial or full shutdown? And then which means have to meet all. The third, the consequence on the business due to the inability to purchase critical goods. And that was in our rule of government order. Is it the consequence to the business? Well, consequence means money. That means profits. So if my profits continue on, and I've got clients, it's almost like daily, at least weekly, I have a client or two that says, hey, I saw it on TV, And in doing that, I just ask them these questions. I have yet to find a client that qualifies because of all the documentation required. It's not 8 minutes. So I think it's really important to realize that first thing is we have a supply chain disruption. What test do I have to get to? That was these three. First, was it part or due to a government order? You're going to have to call the supplier, and we're going to get into what you need to ask in a minute. Secondly, did you check to see if there's alternative suppliers? And thirdly, what is the consequence? So I've spent enough time on that. So now let's look at what I need to document. So you go, okay, I found my client, I found the supplier. Yes, it's a government order. I can't get the product anywhere else in the world, and it's going to cause my company. The consequence is I'm not making as much money. So we've identified the supply chain disruption. We've went through those three tests. We've now identified we have a chain disruption. What do we need to document? And this is what I didn't find in these advertisements. The rest of the story. Document the name of the supplier, the location of the supplier. See, when the IRS checks this, they're going to see at the time you were trying to make that order, was the supplier in an area where there was a order of partial or full shutdown. Because remember, if they were essential, they wouldn't shut down. The specific government orders imposing a disruption for partial or full shutdown on the supplier. So you're going to have to say to the supplier, I need to know, not only what time period, but I also need to know for you what time period. So you may have shipped me something and it was already out of the plant the day before the shutdown, or it may be a short period, but it's got to be during that order. Fourthly, the duration of the supply chain disruption. When did it start and when did it stop? The evidence that no other supplier could fill the eligible employer's need. You're going to have to say, I call this, or, however you approached it. It's not that I just couldn't, and just because I need paper cups, I may have paper cups with clear. I may have paper cups that are paper. I may have paper cups with stripes on it. But how critical is that goods? In that case, I can substitute. And finally, a detailed description of the supply disruption on the eligible employer. So those are the documents that you're going to have. And again, remember, we've now determined we have, just to kind of recap before I go into the limitations based on the point of the supply chain problem. So what we've done is we said it's a government order. That's these tests here. We check for alternative supplier, and we at that point in time have suffered a consequence. It says consequence on the business. So we have to meet all three. So we've met those. We've now said, yep, and we know we need to document all this things here. But more in detail, what we have to look at, and this is where I'm going to go to the supply chain considerations. So this is looking at the last phrase of limiting commercial, travel, or group meetings. Sourcing point, a manufacturer produces a good. So it's the government order could be where the product is being produced. Okay? Storage point, the goods are stored locally or waiting to be shipped. The place where it was stored was shut down. So here I'm giving you the different places. It could have been the supply chain disruption. So I'm helping you look to qualify. In this video, I'm not just telling you no. But if you've gone through the steps we've already talked about, this is kind of what we need to document. Transfer point, the goods are loaded onto a cargo container at a dock or similar area. Let me talk about that one because that was a good example of what I've been asked on the road a lot. You know, we had that time when there were ships and cargo stuff setting in the Pacific Ocean, and you have San Diego and you have LA, and there's docks to be unloaded. Well, first thing is you're going to have to prove that your product that you were waiting on from your supplier was sitting out there. Secondly, it's got to be at a time period when the dock had a government order shutdown. But most of the time period, it was not a government shutdown. It was a fact they couldn't get people to show up to unload. So if you go and look at these points, in this case, if it was a shipping point, unloading, at the port, it had to be available to be unloaded at the time the government was shut down of that port. And the ports are essential. So most of the ports had very little or short shutdowns. So I think I go down through this, shipping at land, sea, and I can tell you there are government orders like on the ports. But in summary, it's more than 8 minutes to get 26,000. And the other thing I ran into, I had the last place I presented. At one point in time, I had 4 tax professionals saying that they had clients that had gone through one of these third-party providers. And they all 4 said their clients got 6 quarters. That's a year and a half of ERC. A government order is from this point, this date, to this date. I hope this helps. I know it's very, very complicated, and I'm going to be doing a couple of other ERC videos in a different angle, so stay tuned. And again, I hope this helps, and see you on the next video.